New York City never slept, and just like the city, Charlotte Charlie Brooks hadn't had a decent night's sleep in days. The Imperial Grand Hotel, situated in the heart of Manhattan, was a gathering place for powerful businessmen, politicians, and celebrities. With its dazzling crystal chandeliers, lavishly designed interiors, and meticulous attention to detail, it stood as a symbol of wealth and prestige. But for Charlie, this hotel was not a place of luxury to indulge in. It was a battlefield. As the customer service manager, her job wasn't just about welcoming guests. It was about handling every absurd demand that the ultra-rich could think of. A week ago, an A-list actress demanded that the water in her bathtub be filtered through 7 layers of activated charcoal. 3 days ago, a royal guest insisted on having 15 pure, sandalwood-scented candles delivered to his suite in the middle of the night. And tonight? Charlie glanced at her task list and let out a sigh. Final inspection of the presidential suite before the VIP guest's arrival. The easiest job on her list today. Dragging herself to the top floor of the hotel, Charlie stepped into the presidential suite, which stood proudly with a breathtaking view of the entire city. This wasn't just a room. It was an entire world of its own, complete with custom-designed furnishings, an elegant bar, and a king-size bed so inviting it could make anyone forget their troubles. She carried out her checks with professional efficiency. The room temperature was perfect. The bed was impeccably made, not a single crease in sight. The minibar was stocked with expensive wine. Everything was flawless. But there was one thing she couldn't control: her exhaustion. Her shift had stretched to 16 hours, and her legs felt like they were made of concrete. Just 1 minute, she told herself, eyeing the plush sofa near the window. Just 1 minute to sit down. She sank into the luxurious sofa, the softness instantly soothing her aching muscles. Just 1 minute, maybe 5. She wasn't sure anymore. Her eyelids grew heavier, her mind foggy, and before she could stop herself, she drifted off into sleep right there on the sofa. Nathaniel Whitmore stepped into the presidential suite after a long day on Wall Street. This was supposed to be one of his rare moments of peace in his packed schedule. But the second he walked in, he immediately sensed something was off. Someone was in his room. The intruder wasn't a thief, nor was it a careless hotel staff member. It was a woman dressed in the hotel's uniform, fast asleep on a sofa. Nate frowned. He should call security, have someone deal with this immediately. But instead of doing that, he stopped and observed her. Her chestnut brown hair was hastily tied up, with a few stray strands falling across her cheek. Her uniform was slightly wrinkled after what must have been a long day. Her long lashes fluttered slightly as she slept, and her lips were slightly parted as if she had just muttered something before dozing off. She looked completely exhausted. He didn't know why he was still standing there, quietly watching her, instead of calling someone to remove her right away. But there was something about her that intrigued him. She wasn't like the women he usually met at extravagant galas, those who always tried to capture his attention with dazzling gowns and practiced smiles. She looked real, ordinary, but in an oddly captivating way. Nate sighed. He didn't have time for unnecessary distractions. He stepped closer, preparing to wake her up, politely but firmly. But before he could, Charlie scrunched her nose slightly and mumbled in her sleep, "No, I swear I didn't eat all the cookies in the kitchen." Nate paused. Wait, this woman was dreaming about stealing cookies? Seriously? For the first time in years, a ghost of a smile appeared on Nathaniel Whitmore's lips. He leaned down slightly, his voice deep but tinged with amusement. "So you're the one responsible for the missing cookies in the hotel?" Charlie jolted awake. Her eyes flew open, locking on to the icy blue gaze of the man standing before her. And in that exact moment, all of her mental faculties snapped back into place. She was no longer half asleep. She knew exactly where she was. She knew exactly who this man was. And she knew that she had just fallen asleep in the suite of one of the most powerful men in New York. Oh, crap. She shot up so fast that she smacked her shin against the glass coffee table, knocking a magazine onto the floor. A sharp pain shot up her leg, but she had no time to react to it, because Nate Whitmore was still staring at her. Mr. Whitmore. Her voice came out dry as her brain scrambled for a way to salvage the situation. Nate crossed his arms, one brow arched. You seem familiar with my name. Who in this city wasn't? Of course, Charlie wasn't stupid enough to say that out loud. Instead, she forced a stiff smile and tried to regain her usual professional demeanor. Good evening, sir. I was just checking the sofa. Nate blinked. Checking? Charlie nodded so hard she nearly gave herself whiplash. Yes, that's right. Here at our hotel, sofa comfort is one of the key factors in ensuring the best VIP experience. Nate stared at her for a long moment. And you check it by sleeping on it? Charlie tried very hard not to scream in embarrassment. Well, I've been working for a while, and I might have been too dedicated to my job. She dropped her gaze, desperately hoping he wouldn't call security and fire her on the spot, but instead she heard a light sigh. How many hours have you worked today? Nate's question made her blink in surprise. She hadn't expected him to care. I started my shift at 7 a.m. She glanced at the clock. 11 p.m. She immediately shut her mouth. Nate looked at her for a second longer, as if weighing something in his mind. Then he exhaled and pulled out his phone. Send up a pot of tea and 2 cups, he instructed room service. Charlie was utterly baffled. What are you doing? Nate set his phone down and gave her a calm look. If you've been working 16 straight hours to the point of collapsing in a guest suite, I think the least you deserve is a cup of tea before you get fired. Welcome to today's story. May you always be safe, happy, and blessed. Let us know which city you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel to become a member of the family. Invite your friends and loved ones to enjoy these meaningful stories together. Charlie sat frozen on the plush sofa, her brain still struggling to process everything that had just happened. At this very moment, she should have been scrambling for an explanation or drafting her resignation letter, not sitting here waiting for tea in Nathaniel Whitmore's presidential suite. She stole a glance at the man sitting across from her. Why hadn't he fired her yet? Nate Whitmore wasn't known for being lenient or generous. Every article written about him painted him as a ruthless businessman, a man who had no interest in anything or anyone outside of his work. Yet here he was, calmly pouring tea and inviting her to sit down for a conversation. This was beyond strange. Charlie decided to break the silence before her imagination ran wild. Mr. Whitmore, she started, putting on her most professional voice, despite still feeling a bit on edge. May I ask why I'm still sitting here instead of being escorted out of the building? Nate set his teacup down and looked at her, his expression unreadable. I'm curious. Charlie raised an eyebrow. Curious about me falling asleep on your sofa? No. A small smirk tugged at Nate's lips. I'm curious how someone can work 16 hours straight and still have enough energy to come up with such an absurd excuse about testing sofa comfort without flinching? Charlie's face burned with embarrassment. She picked up her teacup, taking a sip as if the tea could somehow help her swallow down the shame pooling in her stomach. I've worked at this hotel for almost 7 years, she sighed, setting the cup down. If I didn't learn how to think on my feet, I would have been fired a long time ago. Nate nodded, his sharp gaze still fixed on her. So, you've been here a while? Charlie nodded. Yes. I started in housekeeping and worked my way up. Now I manage guest services, which means I'm the one responsible for handling any VIP issues. She shrugged. Or, in this case, for handling someone falling asleep in the presidential suite. A quiet chuckle escaped Nate, a rare sound. So, you clean up the messes, make sure everything runs smoothly? Exactly, Charlie grinned. And I make sure the guests don't find out about the absolute chaos that happens behind the scenes. Chaos? Nate raised an eyebrow. Charlie laughed, the initial tension melting away. Oh, let me tell you. 3 weeks ago, a prince requested that exactly 99 blue rose petals be scattered across his bed. She rolled her eyes. Blue roses! As if we could just snap our fingers and summon them out of thin air. Nate leaned forward slightly intrigued. So, what did you do? I called in a floral designer, ordered 99 white roses, and dyed them with food coloring. Charlie winked. And the prince still hasn't figured it out. Nate let out a genuine laugh, a deep, rich sound that Charlie had never expected to hear from the man often described as Wall Street's most intimidating billionaire. She stared at him, momentarily stunned. This moment felt strange. Nathaniel Whitmore, one of the most feared men in finance, was laughing. Not a scoff, not a mocking smirk. A real, honest laugh at one of her ridiculous hotel stories. She shook her head slightly, telling herself she was imagining things. But just as the thought crossed her mind, Nate's expression shifted back to serious. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, his gaze unwavering. "You're good at handling problems." Charlie shrugged. "It's my job." "Then do it for me." Charlie blinked. "Excuse me?" "I want you to be my personal assistant." For a second, Charlie thought she misheard him. "I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?" Nate leaned back in his seat, his usual icy demeanor returning. "I need an assistant who can do more than just manage schedules. I need someone who can handle difficult situations, like you did tonight." He arched an eyebrow. "I believe you have that ability." Charlie's jaw nearly dropped. "You're serious? Do I look like someone who jokes?" Charlie had no idea how to respond to that. Nathaniel Whitmore was one of the most demanding billionaires in the world. His previous assistants were all highly trained professionals with Ivy League degrees. And her, she was a guest services manager with an unfinished finance degree. So why was he offering her this? She took a deep breath, trying to think logically. Why me? Nate's answer was simple. "Because you have guts." Charlie blinked. "And?" Nate smirked. "And I like the way you work." Charlie sat still for a moment, feeling as if her brain was trying to process too much information at once. A new job, a higher salary, a chance to take care of her younger brother without having to work 16-hour shifts every day. But working for Nate Whitmore? She cleared her throat. "I'm not going to be your puppet." Nate blinked but didn't look the least bit offended. "I don't need a puppet." His voice was calm, matter of fact. Charlie crossed her arms, her tone firm. "I'll help you manage your work, but I'm not serving tea or running around buying ties." A flicker of amusement crossed Nate's face. "Fair enough." Charlie hesitated. "Seriously?" "Seriously," Nate nodded. "As long as you help me keep things running smoothly, I won't ask you to make tea." Charlie narrowed her eyes, searching for some kind of hidden catch. But there was none. She took a deep breath, locking eyes with the powerful man sitting across from her. "In that case, Mr. Whitmore, I believe we have a deal." Nate inclined his head slightly, his sharp gaze glinting with something that almost resembled intrigue. "Welcome to hell, Charlotte Brooks." On her first day as Nathaniel Whitmore's assistant, Charlie quickly realized she had thrown herself into the lion's den. If managing VIP guests at the hotel had kept her busy, working as Nate's assistant was an entirely new level of chaos. His schedule was packed from morning to night, and at times she swore he neither ate nor slept. One meeting followed another. Emails flooded in like a relentless storm, and his phone never stopped ringing. And the worst part, Nathaniel Whitmore was not an easy boss. Early in the morning, just as she arrived at the office, Nate shoved a thick stack of documents into her hands, his eyes never leaving his computer screen. "Review this report before the 9 o'clock meeting and rearrange my afternoon schedule. I don't want any meetings after 4. Charlie blinked at the mountain of paperwork in her hands. "Do you seriously think I can read all of this in 30 minutes? Nate spared her a single glance, his expression devoid of sympathy. "I hired you because you're smart. Prove it." Charlie narrowed her eyes. All right, if he wanted to test her, she'd show him exactly what she was capable of. After a morning spent running back and forth, managing his schedule and organizing reports, Charlie thought she might finally have a moment to breathe. That was until Nate suddenly walked into her office with an air of composed patience. "Pick a tie for me." Charlie looked up, blinking. "Excuse me? I need a tie for my executive meeting. You're my assistant, so pick one." Charlie glanced at his wardrobe. Everything was boring, black, navy blue, gray, brown. She smirked. If she was going to do this, she might as well have some fun. She pulled out a neon pink tie and handed it to him. Nate stared at it. "You're serious. You told me to choose." Charlie shrugged, completely unfazed. "This will make you stand out among a sea of dull suits. Trust me, your partners will never forget you." Nate continued staring at her, clearly debating whether to fire her on the spot or see how far this joke would go. Finally, with an exasperated sigh, he loosened his collar and tied the neon pink fabric around his crisp white shirt. 10 minutes later, as he walked into the boardroom, the entire office went silent. The executives stared at him, their expressions caught between confusion and cultural shock. Charlie stood outside the door, barely able to contain her laughter. Nate, on the other hand, remained completely unfazed. He sat down at the head of the table with a composed expression, as if wearing an obnoxiously bright tie in a multi-million-dollar business meeting was the most natural thing in the world. After the meeting, Nate walked out, loosening the tie as he fixed his gaze on Charlie. "I hope you're satisfied." Charlie grinned. "I'm very satisfied, and I bet your executives are too." Nate let out a soft huff but said nothing more. She knew he wasn't mad, just unused to being teased. And honestly, seeing someone as serious as Nathaniel Whitmore bring a bit of color into his life wasn't a bad thing at all. One of Charlie's toughest tasks as Nate's assistant was helping him be less rigid. His speeches, while sharp and intellectually sound, lacked any connection with the audience. They were too serious, too precise, and utterly devoid of personality. Charlie decided it was time to intervene. "I made a few adjustments to your speech." She placed her revised version on Nate's desk. He skimmed through it, then frowned. "What is this?" Charlie grinned proudly. "A version that won't put the audience to sleep." Nate looked up at her. "What did you add?" "Oh, just a bit of humor, a little personality and—" Nate held up a hand to stop her. "I'm not a comedian, Charlie." "No, but you're also not a robot." Charlie crossed her arms. "If you want your employees to actually listen to what you're saying, you need to make your speeches a little less lifeless." Nate sighed but picked up the speech and started reading. 2 days later, at a company conference, he stood in front of hundreds of employees and delivered the revised speech. When he casually threw in a simple joke, something as minor as, "Waiting for the elevator in this building is like waiting for stocks to rise," the entire room erupted in laughter. Charlie's eyes widened. Did he actually follow her suggestion? She glanced at Nate and swore she saw the corners of his lips twitch upward at the audience's response. After the speech, Nate walked over to her. "The joke about the elevator, that was yours." Charlie shrugged. "What did you think?" Nate nodded slowly. "It was effective." Charlie smirked victoriously. "See? Told you so." Nate studied her for a moment before quietly picking up her revised notes. Charlie could swear she saw him smile just a little before walking away. The more they worked together, the more Nate found himself drawn to Charlie's blunt honesty, sharp wit, and relentless passion. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. She wasn't afraid of him, didn't try to impress him, and had no hesitation in calling him out when she thought he was wrong. But despite everything, Nate maintained his distance. Because he knew they came from two different worlds. Charlie was strong, independent, and had spent her life working tirelessly to support her younger brother. She came from a middle-class background where hard work was survival, not a choice. Meanwhile, Nate had been born into wealth and power, raised in a world of billion-dollar deals, extravagant galas, and strategic alliances. If he let himself get too close, if he allowed emotions to interfere, he knew it wouldn't end well. Nate reminded himself of that every single day. And yet, every time Charlie walked into the room with that brilliant smile, every time she fired off one of her razor-sharp jokes, every time she challenged his perspective without a hint of hesitation, he found himself wanting to break that distance more than ever. The Whitmore Holdings business event was held at one of New York's most luxurious hotels, gathering powerful executives, influential figures, and of course, the ever-present media with their cameras ready. Charlie had absolutely no desire to be there, but her grumpy boss had other plans. "You're coming with me." That was Nathaniel Whitmore's decree the moment she walked into the office that morning, coffee still in hand. Charlie gaped at him. Why? I'm just your assistant, not one of your senior executives. Nate responded coolly. Because I don't have time to explain things to a new person. You understand how I work, you know what I need, and most importantly, he paused, his gaze lingering on her skeptical expression. You can control me, Charlie snorted. Oh, so you're aware of that? Good, because sometimes I feel like you just enjoy making my life difficult. Nate didn't argue, only gave her a pointed look that made it clear. This was not a negotiation. Charlie sighed, realizing she had no choice. Fine, but I'm not wearing a gown or heels. As long as you're not in a hotel uniform. In the end, she was dragged to the event in a simple navy blue cocktail dress, low-heeled shoes, and absolutely no mental preparation for what was about to happen. The moment Charlie walked in with Nate, she could feel the shift in the atmosphere, the curious stares, the side glances filled with speculation, the hushed whispers behind her back, and as she expected, the flashes of cameras quickly turned in their direction. This isn't a big deal, right? She whispered to Nate. His response was infuriatingly calm. You think so? Charlie's skin prickled at the sound of cameras clicking furiously. Oh, come on. She was just an assistant. Why were these reporters reacting as if she were his date? And by the next morning, she finally understood why Nate hadn't bothered to deny anything. The financial news sites, business magazines, even the gossip tabloids, they were flooded with images of her and Nate standing together. The headlines screamed at her, Nathaniel Whitmore's mysterious assistant, the only woman who can melt the ice-cold billionaire? Whitmore attends event with assistant, strictly business or something more. The first woman beside Nathaniel in a decade. Is this the start of a romance? Charlie nearly dropped her phone into her cereal bowl. What the hell was happening? She had merely accompanied her boss to an event, a completely normal task for an assistant. How had it turned into some dramatic love affair? And worst of all, the social media comments were even more terrifying. The public reaction and the social media chaos. Who is she? Never heard of her. She's probably another gold digger. Nathaniel should be careful. Ridiculous. An assistant going after a billionaire? Please. Maybe she's actually talented. No one stays by Whitmore's side without having real skills. Charlie didn't know whether to laugh or be annoyed. She had never expected to have a fandom that was both nosy and hostile at the same time. But she didn't care. This wasn't the first time people judged her based on appearances. She had been looked down on when she worked as a waitress, ignored by VIP guests who treated her like she was invisible, pityingly stared at when people learned she had to drop out of college to support her younger brother. Online comments, they were nothing. She scoffed, turned off her phone, and went back to work. But there was one person who wasn't as indifferent as she was. That morning in Nate's office, the air was noticeably heavier. Charlie sat in her usual seat, notebook in hand, ready to take notes for the day's schedule. But Nate wasn't saying anything. He just sat there staring at his laptop screen in silence. Charlie raised an eyebrow. Are you planning to sit there all day? Nate slowly looked up, his gray eyes colder than usual. Did you read the news this morning? Charlie nodded. Of course, but don't worry. I have no plans to marry rich. She shrugged, intentionally cracking a joke to lighten the mood. But Nate didn't laugh. Instead, he pushed his laptop toward her, displaying a different article, one that focused entirely on criticizing her. Charlotte Brooks, a nobody or an opportunist seeking the spotlight? The mysterious assistant's past. Why did she drop out of college? Is she actually competent or just a lucky pawn? Charlie felt heat rise to her face. Not because she was insulted, but because they had dragged her younger brother into it. Sources reveal that Brooks had to work multiple labor-intensive jobs to support her younger brother, who is currently a freshman at New York University. This raises the question, is she truly qualified for her current position, or simply a fortunate case of being in the right place at the right time? Her fingers curled into fists. These people seriously have too much free time. She took a deep breath, forced herself to stay calm, and looked at Nate. But I don't care, I've heard worse things in my life. Nate slowly closed his laptop. But I care. His voice was low and sharp, an edge she hadn't heard from him before. Charlie blinked, caught off guard. Nathaniel Whitmore, the man who was indifferent to everything, was actually angry because someone insulted her? He stood up, loosened his tie, and his gaze turned razor sharp. "They think I'll sit back and let them smear my employee," he scoffed. "They're mistaken." Charlie smirked in amusement. "I don't think I've ever seen you this mad over anyone but yourself." Nate shot her a brief look before picking up his phone. "Schedule a press conference. I'll handle this personally." Charlie leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. She had assumed the rumors would die down over time, but it was clear that Nate had no intention of letting them slide, and she couldn't help but wonder, what was the real reason behind his reaction? The laptop cast a faint blue glow in Kira Donovan's small apartment. The clock on the wall neared midnight, yet she showed no sign of tearing her eyes away from the screen. An anonymous email, with no name and no sender address, had just appeared in her inbox. "If you want to expose one of the biggest dirty financial networks in the world, board the Elysium yacht this Friday. Your ticket has been arranged." Beneath that brief message was an attached file containing documents about Blackwood Shipping, the largest maritime transport corporation in Europe, with a logistics network spanning across the oceans. And the man at the helm of this empire was none other than Sebastian Blackwood, a powerful CEO, yet so elusive he was almost invisible. No one knew his face. There were no interviews, no official photos. In fact, no one could even confirm if he truly existed. Blackwood Shipping was not just a shipping company. In the underground financial world, there were rumors that the corporation was not only involved in legal cargo transport, but also controlled massive illicit trades. Weapons, blood diamonds, money laundering. Whispers surrounded Blackwood Shipping, but no one had ever gathered enough proof to expose them, until Kira received this email. She narrowed her eyes and scrolled to the bottom of the email, where a VIP ticket to the Elysium yacht was attached. A luxurious floating palace owned by Blackwood Shipping, where billion-dollar deals were sealed amidst extravagant, unregulated parties. Kira never trusted anonymous messages. But these documents, they were real. And if there was even the slightest chance to uncover the true face of Blackwood Shipping, she wouldn't miss it. Kira was no stranger to high-stakes investigations. She had exposed an international money laundering ring, brought a corrupt politician to justice, and faced powerful figures willing to do anything to silence her. But this time, she felt something different. This story was far more dangerous than anything she had ever encountered. Blackwood Shipping was too big, too powerful, and the man behind it, Sebastian Blackwood, was nothing short of a ghost in the financial world. She knew she was playing a dangerous game, but the truth had to be revealed. She clicked on the ticket and placed it in her case file. 3 days from now, she would step aboard the Elysium, posing as a VIP guest, and for the first time, she would come face to face with this elusive empire. What she didn't know was that this journey would change her life forever. Welcome to today's story. May God bless you with all the best things in life. Subscribe to our channel to become part of the family. Don't forget to share your thoughts on this story. The Monaco harbor shimmered under dazzling lights as Kira stepped onto the gangway leading to the Elysium yacht. Guests arrived in stunning evening gowns and impeccable tuxedos, the elite of the world, people who could spend millions without a second thought. She adjusted her elegant black dress and flashed a confident smile, blending seamlessly into the crowd as if she truly belonged there. But in reality, with every step she took, she was edging closer to an enormous secret. The secret of Sebastian Blackwood. And the man she was about to meet tonight, the one who would make her question everything she had ever believed in. The shimmering lights from the crystal chandelier reflected on the bar counter, creating an ethereal glow, like diamonds glistening in the midnight sea. Kira Donovan let her gaze sweep across the room, taking in every detail while maintaining a natural, effortless demeanor. The bar aboard the Elysium yacht was the meeting place of the world's most powerful figures, people who could sway global economies with a mere nod. She settled onto a bar stool, ordering a whiskey on the rocks, strong and sharp, much like herself. Barely a minute had passed when a deep, velvety voice sounded beside her. "Interesting choice." She raised an eyebrow and turned her head, immediately locking eyes with a gaze so deep, so unreadable, yet undeniably captivating. The man before her exuded an unusual presence, not ostentatious, yet impossible to ignore. His perfectly tailored black suit accentuated his tall, commanding figure. But what truly drew Kira in were his eyes, piercing, enigmatic, and impossible to decipher. She had never seen him before, yet somehow he felt strangely familiar. "Who are you?" she asked directly, unwilling to waste time on pleasantries. The man smirked, his lips curving into a cryptic smile. "Just another guest on the yacht." Under the warm golden glow of the chandeliers, they began to talk. At first, it was nothing more than casual small talk about drinks, the voyage, the extravagance of the yacht. But soon their conversation evolved into something more, a subtle, psychological game, a delicate battle of wits between two strangers. He was unlike any man Kira had ever met. He wasn't eager, didn't attempt to impress her like the other men on the yacht. On the contrary, he was reserved, measured. Each of his words felt like a finely honed blade, sharp and precise, cutting straight through her defenses. And Kira found herself drawn in. "You still haven't told me your name." She narrowed her eyes, absent-mindedly tracing the rim of her glass with a fingertip. "And you haven't told me yours." His reply was calm, effortless. "I don't like revealing personal information to strangers." She smirked. "Neither do I." His smile lingered, unwavering. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was thick with intrigue, charged with something unspoken. His eyes were like an endless abyss, dark and unreadable. Yet there was an undeniable pull to them, and at that moment, Kira felt something shift within her. The salty breeze swept through the yacht's corridors, carrying with it a silent invitation, a forceful, magnetic pull that even she couldn't quite explain. She had planned to leave, had intended to keep her distance, but something about this man made it impossible to walk away. A reckless impulse, a dangerous enigma. Or perhaps, for the first time in years, she simply wanted to let go. No words were exchanged. They simply gazed at each other, and naturally, as if fate had already decided, she let him pull her into a slow, intoxicating dance beneath the midnight sky. A firm hand on her waist, a steady breath near her ear. And in that fleeting, fragile moment, Kira knew she had lost control. She let herself be drawn into him, let logic and reason dissolve into nothingness. And in an opulent suite aboard the Elysium, beneath the silver moonlight reflecting off the endless ocean, they spent a night neither of them would ever forget. Kira awoke to the soft glow of morning filtering through the sheer curtains. The warmth of the night still lingered in the sheets, yet the man from last night was gone. No note, no message. She slowly sat up, scanning the room as if searching for something. But there was nothing, only an eerie emptiness, a strange sense of unease creeping into her chest. Could someone walk into her life so suddenly, make her abandon all her principles, and then vanish like they had never existed? Kira clenched the sheets between her fingers, a single thought forming in her mind. I don't even know his name. What she didn't know was that in just a few weeks, she would uncover a truth that would entangle her in a web of deception with no escape. And the man who had disappeared this morning was none other than the very person she had boarded the yacht to investigate, Sebastian Blackwood. Kira's small apartment was bathed in the soft morning light, yet she felt no warmth. Her hands clenched tightly around the pregnancy test, eyes locked onto the two unmistakable red lines. She was pregnant. Her breath hitched, heart pounding so violently it felt like it might break free from her chest. No, this can't be. But this was already the third test. Her fingers unconsciously moved to her stomach. A tiny life was forming inside her, the child of the mysterious man from that night, the man whose name she had never known, the man who had left no trace aboard the Elysium, the man who had vanished the next morning like a ghost. Kira was not the kind of woman who believed in fate. She had been abandoned as a child, raised in a cold and unfeeling foster system where she had learned the harsh truth. Never place your hopes in anyone. Love? She had once believed in it, but the only man she had ever loved had tossed her aside without hesitation, choosing a strategic marriage over their relationship. From that moment, She had stopped believing in men, in commitments. And now she wouldn't need the father of this child either. She would raise this baby on her own, protect it the way no one had protected her. She didn't need the responsibility of a stranger, especially one who had disappeared without a word. But there was one thing she couldn't ignore. Who was he? Her investigative instincts told her that this man was not ordinary. She needed to find out the truth. She began searching. With years of experience in uncovering hidden secrets, Kira knew how to find what people wanted to keep buried. She traced the Elysium's guest list, scoured through names, examined every photo, but none of them matched the man from that night. And that only made her suspicions grow stronger. No one disappears without a trace. Something was wrong. Then one morning as she scrolled through a financial news article, her heart nearly stopped. The man in the photograph was the man she had spent the night with, Sebastian Blackwood, the most enigmatic CEO in the world. But what left her frozen wasn't just his identity, it was the headline beneath the image. Sebastian Blackwood, the mysterious CEO declared dead in a maritime accident 6 months ago. She had been with him that night, had felt his warmth, had looked directly into his eyes. He could not be dead. She could not have slept with a man who no longer existed. But what about the media? Why did every single news outlet report his death as an undeniable fact? Determined to find answers, she dug deeper, searching through archived articles, forensic reports of the accident, and that was when she found something strange. No one had ever seen his body. The official reports claimed his body had been lost at sea, yet shortly after, Blackwood Shipping publicly declared him deceased, as if someone wanted the world to believe Sebastian Blackwood no longer existed. Just as Kira started to uncover more, an anonymous email landed in her inbox. "Stop, Kira. Do not dig any further into Sebastian Blackwood. You are stepping into something you cannot control." No sender, no trace, a warning from the shadows as if someone was watching her every move. But instead of fear, a fire ignited in her eyes. She was not the kind of woman who backed down from threats. She was carrying the child of a man the world believed to be dead, and she would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The light drizzle fell softly as Kira stood before the towering headquarters of Blackwood Shipping in the heart of London. The skyscraper's glass walls reflected the overcast sky, giving the entire structure a cold, imperious aura, just like the man behind it, Sebastian Blackwood. She still couldn't believe she was standing here, about to confront a man the entire world believed was dead. For the past 2 months, she had tried to make sense of what had happened, but the deeper she dug, the more terrifying the truth became. If Sebastian Blackwood was truly dead, then who had she spent that night with? And if he was alive, why was there such an elaborate effort to keep it a secret? She didn't care about his business, didn't need to know why he faked his death. She only needed one answer. Taking a deep breath, Kira pulled her coat tighter and stepped through the revolving glass doors. The lobby of Blackwood Shipping was grand, with high ceilings and warm golden lights. But it did nothing to soften the sterile chill that clung to the air. Employees in tailored suits moved efficiently through the space, yet something about the atmosphere felt off, a tension that shouldn't exist in a corporate environment. She strode purposefully to the front desk, her sharp gaze flicking to the receptionist's name tag. "I need to speak with someone." The receptionist hesitated, clearly caught off guard. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Who are you looking for?" Kira studied their reaction closely, noting the slight unease in their expression. They didn't know Sebastian was alive. That meant he was operating in the shadows, or someone else was pulling the strings in his absence. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "I have information about Sebastian Blackwood." As expected, the receptionist's expression immediately shifted. Their breath hitched, eyes darting slightly as if trying to determine whether this was some kind of joke. "I think you must be mistaken. Mr. Blackwood passed away." She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Oh? Then who's running this company?" The receptionist stiffened, clearly unwilling to say more. Before Kira could press further, a group of men in tailored black suits emerged from a private elevator across the lobby. They moved with practiced precision, the kind of people who were used to power and absolute control. And in the center of them, she saw him, Sebastian Blackwood, alive, in the flesh. Kira froze. He wasn't dead. He was here, walking through the building as if he had never disappeared. And yet he made no sign of recognizing her, no hesitation, no break in his stride. He was either oblivious to her presence or, more likely, deliberately ignoring her. Before she could stop herself, she called out, "Sebastian!" He stilled. The group of men immediately tensed, their posture shifting into high alert. Slowly, he turned to face her. His sharp, storm-gray eyes met hers for the first time since that night. Recognition flickered in his gaze, but he gave no indication of surprise. Instead, his voice was cool, unreadable. "Who are you?" Kira clenched her fists. The bastard. He was pretending. "I need to talk to you." "I don't know you." His voice was infuriatingly calm, and with that, he turned and walked away. "Watch me." Kira wasn't the type to give up. If Sebastian thought he could dismiss her that easily, he had grossly underestimated her. She spent the next hour studying the building's security patterns, watching employees come and go. Eventually, she spotted an opportunity, an executive stepping out of the private elevator using an access card. Timing it perfectly, she slipped in before the doors shut. When the elevator stopped at the top floor, her pulse quickened. She stepped out into a sleek, minimalist corridor, at the end of which loomed a massive wooden door engraved with the Blackwood emblem. She didn't knock. Pushing the door open, she found Sebastian standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, hands in his pockets, his back turned to her, as if he had been expecting her all along. "You shouldn't be here." His voice was low, edged with warning. She shut the door behind her and stepped forward. "Who are you? Why does the world think you're dead?" Slowly, he turned to face her, his expression unreadable, his gaze like the depths of a dark ocean, silent, impenetrable. A long pause stretched between them before he spoke, voice as steady as ever. "I faked my death." She narrowed her eyes, waiting for him to elaborate. "Someone wanted me dead. If I hadn't disappeared, I wouldn't be standing here today." She wasn't surprised. Her instincts had told her there was something far bigger at play, but she didn't care about any of that. She wasn't here to talk about corporate warfare or hidden enemies. She was here for one reason only. Looking directly into his eyes, she said with quiet finality, "I'm pregnant, and the child is yours." No dramatic gasp, no explosion of shock like in the movies. Sebastian simply stood there, staring at her, a silent storm brewing behind his eyes. He didn't speak for several agonizing seconds. Then he stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low and firm. "If the child is mine, I will take responsibility." Kira let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. "I don't need you to take responsibility." Sebastian's expression darkened. "I'll raise this baby myself." She said it with absolute certainty, leaving no room for argument. For the first time, something flickered in his gaze, something almost amused, a spark of challenge. Sebastian Blackwood was a man used to being in control. But the woman standing before him, she wasn't afraid of him. She didn't need him, and she dared to reject him outright. His jaw tightened, his eyes turning sharp. "You think you can just cut me out of my child's life?" Kira arched a brow, smirking slightly. "I don't think. I know." The air between them grew so charged it was suffocating. She had just told Sebastian Blackwood he had no say in his own child's life, and she knew without a doubt that this was only the beginning of the battle between them. The tension between Kira and Sebastian had barely settled when the office door burst open. A deafening explosion shook the entire room, shattering the glass windows into countless razor-sharp shards. Instinct took over. Sebastian lunged forward, grabbing Kira and pulling her down just as the glass rained around them. Dark figures stormed in, their guns glinting under the office lights. Armed assassins. No warnings, no demands. They were here to kill. Sebastian wasted no time. He yanked Kira up, his grip tight around her wrist. "Run!" His voice was sharp, commanding, leaving no room for argument. Kira barely had time to process what was happening before he was dragging her out of the room. The air behind them whistled as bullets sliced through it, splintering the thick wooden door they had just slammed shut. Sebastian moved with terrifying precision. He wasn't panicked, wasn't hesitating. Every step was calculated, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. Kira wasn't weak, but in that moment, she had no choice but to keep up. They sprinted down a long corridor, the emergency lights flashing red, casting an eerie glow over the chaos. This was a nightmare. "Do you have a gun?" Sebastian asked as they dashed past rows of offices. "I'm a journalist, not a damn assassin," Kira shot back, breathless. Sebastian muttered a curse under his breath, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a Glock. "Then learn fast." He pressed the weapon into her hands without breaking stride. The sound of gunfire echoed through the halls as they dove into the stairwell. More assassins? They weren't just after Sebastian, they were after both of them. Kira's pulse pounded as she spotted figures at both the top and bottom of the stairs. "Shit, we're surrounded!" Sebastian's grip tightened. "Stay with me." Without warning, he yanked her into a side hallway, shoving open a heavy steel door. A storage room, dimly lit, filled with metal shelves. At the far end, she spotted an emergency exit. "Go," Sebastian ordered. They pushed through the door, emerging into the underground parking garage. Sebastian didn't hesitate. He pulled out his key fob and pressed a button. Headlights flashed as a sleek black sports car roared to life. "Get in!" Kira didn't need to be told twice. The engine roared as Sebastian floored the gas, the tires screeching against the concrete as they sped out of the garage. The city blurred past them, neon lights streaking across the windshield. In the rearview mirror, Kira spotted black SUVs speeding after them, their headlights slicing through the night. "Who the hell are they?" she shouted over the wind and the engine's growl. Sebastian's jaw clenched. "People who want me dead." She let out a dry laugh, adrenaline still spiking through her veins. "Well, congratulations. They're doing a damn good job of trying." Sebastian didn't respond. His hands were tight on the wheel, his gaze locked on the road. The car swerved sharply into a narrow side street, trying to shake off the pursuit, but the assassins weren't giving up. The high-speed chase dragged on through the labyrinth of London's streets until Sebastian finally maneuvered the car into an underground parking lot, cutting the engine and signaling Kira to stay quiet. They sat in the darkness, listening as the distant screech of tires faded into the distance. The silence that followed was suffocating. Kira exhaled slowly, fingers still curled around the cold grip of the Glock. She turned to face Sebastian. "Now what?" His storm gray eyes met hers. "We need to leave London, immediately." She blinked, still trying to catch up with everything. "Wait, what? Why the hell would I go anywhere with you?" Sebastian's lips curled into a dry smirk. "Because you think they'll just let you walk away after seeing you with me?" Kira opened her mouth to argue, but shut it just as fast. She hated that he was right. She had already been dragged into this mess. There was no turning back now. She slumped against the seat, muttering a curse under her breath. "This is insane." Sebastian barely spared her a glance before pulling out his phone. He pressed a number, his voice low and firm. "Prepare the jet. We leave in an hour." Kira clenched her fists. She had never expected her investigation to lead here. But now she had no choice. They had to run. The private jet touched down at a secluded airstrip just outside Paris, its wheels skimming the runway with effortless precision. Sebastian wasted no time lingering. As soon as the plane came to a stop, they were already moving, boarding another car, leaving the airport behind, and heading straight into the heart of the city. From the back seat, Kira watched the city lights flicker past the tinted windows. She had been to Paris before, many times in fact, but never like this. Never as a fugitive, caught in the orbit of a man who was supposed to be dead. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm of unanswered questions still raging inside her. Sebastian glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "I have a safe house here, but we can't stay long." Kira studied his reflection, the way his jaw tightened slightly before he returned his focus to the road. "How long have you been living like this?" A long silence stretched between them before he finally spoke. "Longer than you think." When they arrived at the penthouse, the elevator doors opened to reveal a space so pristine, so effortlessly elegant, that it felt completely detached from the chaos of their reality. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a breathtaking view of the Parisian skyline, the Eiffel Tower glowing in the distance like a silent witness to their predicament. Kira stepped inside, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. The sheer luxury of it all made the past 24 hours feel even more surreal. How had her life led her here? Running through cities with a man she barely knew. A man the world thought was dead? Sebastian tossed his coat over the back of a chair and turned to her. Drink? Kira folded her arms. I want to know what the hell is going on. He leaned against the sleek kitchen counter, his gaze darkening slightly. I have enemies. They want control of my company. When they couldn't buy me, they decided to kill me. She held his stare. So why not tell the world you're still alive? Sebastian let out a quiet, humorless laugh. You think it's that simple? I need to find the mastermind behind this before they find me first. Kira exhaled slowly. And now I'm tangled up in this mess. Yes. His voice was calm, unwavering. Then his eyes locked onto hers, something unreadable flickering beneath his controlled exterior. And I can't let you die. For the first time, Kira truly felt the weight of their situation. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a war. A war she had stepped into the moment she set foot on Elysium. But amid the chaos, something else had shifted inside her. It wasn't just survival instinct that kept her here. Maybe it was the way Sebastian protected her without hesitation. Maybe it was the unshakable resolve in his gaze, the way he carried the weight of his enemies without ever showing weakness. Or maybe, just maybe, her heart was beginning to waver. And that was more dangerous than the men hunting them. Snow fell thick and heavy as Sebastian drove through the winding Swiss mountains, towering pines blanketed in white on either side of the road. The SUV glided smoothly across the curves, its headlights cutting through the quiet darkness. Kira sat in the passenger seat, wrapped in a thick coat, her gaze fixed outside the window. But her mind was a complete void. They had been on the run for days, from London to Paris, and now to this remote, secluded region, a place where no one could find them. She knew it was necessary, knew that stopping would mean putting their lives in danger. But somewhere deep inside, she still couldn't fully accept the reality of it all. She was here, traveling through the mountains, with a man she wasn't sure she could trust. Sebastian pulled the SUV to a stop in front of a small cabin, nestled deep within the snowy forest. He shut off the engine but remained in place, gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead in silence. In the absolute stillness of the mountains, Kira could hear his steady but weighted breaths. We'll stay here for a while. His voice was quiet, his fingers tightening slightly against the leather, before he finally pushed open the door and stepped out. Kira watched him for a second before following suit. The icy air hit her lungs like a sharp blade, making her shiver instantly. Snowflakes drifted lazily onto her hair, but she made no move to brush them away. Her thoughts were too tangled, too heavy. Sebastian unlocked the cabin and flicked on the lights, revealing a cozy but modest interior. The stone fireplace was already lit, filling the space with a soft, golden glow. He shrugged off his coat, hanging it up before turning to look at her. Kira hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, peeling off her gloves and walking toward the warmth of the fire. She stretched out her hands, letting the heat seep into her frozen fingers. She was exhausted, not just from the constant running, but from the storm raging inside her mind. Why was she here? She should have gone back to London, continued her life, her work. But everything had changed from the moment she discovered the truth about Sebastian, about the secrets he hid, about the child growing inside her. Footsteps echoed softly behind her. She could feel him before she even turned. Sebastian settled into the chair across from her, the firelight casting deep shadows along his features. His gray eyes, always so guarded, flickered with something she couldn't quite decipher. She had been with him long enough to know he wasn't an easy man to read. But tonight, something in the way he looked at her felt different. "What are you thinking about?" she finally asked, breaking the silence between them. Sebastian held her gaze as if debating whether to answer truthfully. "About us." His voice was steady, but there was weight behind his words. Her heart skipped a beat before she quickly reined herself back in. "There's nothing to think about. This is just an unfortunate situation." Sebastian tilted his head slightly, studying her, as if measuring how much she actually believed her own words. "Do you really think that?" Kira didn't respond immediately. The logical answer would have been, yes. That's what she should say. But she couldn't, because no matter how hard she tried to ignore it, Deny it? Push it away? She couldn't silence the way his presence made her feel safe. She couldn't ignore the way he looked at her, as if she was more important than any of the plans he had set in motion. At first, I only thought about my responsibility to the baby. His voice was low, quiet, yet unwavering. But as time passed, I realized I care about more than just the baby. I care about you, Kira. She went completely still. I don't just want to be the father of our child. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. I want to be the man standing beside you. A rush of emotion slammed into her, too fast, too strong. She had no idea how to respond. She had spent years teaching herself that love was a luxury she couldn't afford, that people always left, betrayed, abandoned. But here he was, a man who was never supposed to mean anything beyond that one night, saying he wanted to stay. She let out a soft, almost disbelieving laugh, shaking her head slightly. Sebastian, you do realize I'm not the type to believe in pretty words, right? He nodded. I know, and I don't expect you to believe me immediately, but I need you to understand. This isn't just responsibility. I love you, Kira. Her heart pounded, a heavy, erratic rhythm against her ribs. She searched his face, looking for lies, for deception, but all she saw was sincerity. She exhaled, her mind spinning. Sebastian, I don't know how to answer that. He didn't pressure her. You don't have to. Not now. Just know that I'm not going anywhere. She turned away, staring into the flickering flames of the fireplace, her fingers unconsciously twisting together. She knew she was wavering. She knew that if she allowed herself to believe him, to hope, she might not be able to walk away. She had spent so long being alone. She had learned how to protect herself, how to survive without needing anyone. But Sebastian, he made that impossible. She could feel his gaze on her, patient, unwavering, waiting, not forcing, not demanding, just waiting. And somehow that scared her more than anything. Pushing to her feet, she pulled her coat closer around her. I need some air. Sebastian didn't stop her. He simply watched as she stepped outside, leaving behind a room thick with words left unspoken. Outside, the cold night air stung her skin, her breath forming soft white clouds against the winter sky. She tilted her head back, staring at the endless expanse of stars, feeling like she was being torn apart by two different versions of herself. Part of her wanted to trust him, to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time it could be different. But another part of her still screamed that she couldn't afford to be weak, that if she gave in, if she handed over her heart, she wouldn't survive it if he left. But deep down, no matter how much she tried to fight it, she knew one thing. Sebastian had become something she never expected, and that was the most terrifying thing of all. Are you still following the story? Leave a comment and let us know where you are following along. The waves crashed forcefully against the ship's hull, creating a deep, guttural roar amidst the pitch-black sea. The luxury yacht Solstice cut through the ocean like a pristine white beast, carrying not only the world's most powerful figures, but also a dark conspiracy reaching its inevitable climax. Sebastian stood on the deck, his gaze cold as steel as he stared into the distance. Tonight would be the last time he faced Vincent Caldwell, the traitor, the former business partner, and once a friend. Beside him, Kira gripped the railing tightly. She was no longer just a woman caught in this war. She had seen the truth, fought alongside Sebastian, and now she would help him end it. Are you sure he'll come? She asked, her voice low but firm. Sebastian didn't turn, his eyes fixed on the lower deck. He has no other choice. The man who betrayed Blackwood Shipping, Vincent Caldwell, once Sebastian's equal, a man who had sat at the same table, toasted billion-dollar deals, and built an empire together, was now the mastermind behind this treachery. Years ago, Vincent had tried to seize control of Blackwood Shipping, but failed. When money couldn't buy Sebastian's submission, he had orchestrated his murder. The maritime accident had been a ruse. Vincent had thought Sebastian was dead, assumed the company would fall effortlessly into his hands. But he had miscalculated. Someone had betrayed him first, exposing his plan before he could claim victory. Sebastian narrowed his eyes as Vincent finally stepped onto the deck, his presence as arrogant as ever. But tonight, there was no partnership, no brotherhood, only vengeance. I must say I'm surprised to see you alive, Sebastian. Vincent's voice was composed, but the tension in his eyes betrayed him. Sebastian smirked, his expression unreadable. Then don't be surprised when you lose. Vincent tilted his head slightly, analyzing every move. You think you've won? I have everything. Board members, investors, unlimited resources. And you? You're a dead man. Before Sebastian could respond, a voice cut through the night air. Do you really think you have everything, Vincent? I'm afraid not. Kira turned sharply, her breath catching, as Ethan Carter, Sebastian's former right-hand man, and the very person she believed had allied with Vincent, emerged from the shadows. You? She gasped, her eyes wide in shock. Ethan stepped forward, his sharp gaze unwavering. Surprised? I was the one who sent you the information, Kira. I contacted you from the very beginning. Sebastian's expression darkened as he eyed Ethan. Why? Ethan gave a wry smile. I spent too many years watching Blackwood Shipping being torn apart, but at the time I truly believed you were dead. I thought the only way to expose the truth was to enlist someone who wasn't afraid to dig where no one else would. That person was Kira. A chill ran down Kira's spine. Ethan had orchestrated everything, but there was something that didn't add up. If you really wanted to help me, why did you later send a warning telling me to stop investigating? She demanded. Ethan sighed, his expression shifting into something almost remorseful. Because I found out Sebastian was alive. Before that, I thought he was gone for good. But once I realized the truth, I knew he had his own plan. The deeper you dug, the more danger you put yourself in. I tried to protect you by making you stop, but I knew someone like you wouldn't give up that easily. Kira bit her lip, conflicting emotions churning inside her. Then why are you standing with us now? Ethan turned to Sebastian, his face devoid of hesitation. Because I finally understood, Vincent doesn't just want to control Blackwood Shipping. He wants to eliminate everyone in his way, including me. I have no choice but to play my final hand. And you, Sebastian, are the only one who can take him down. Vincent's jaw tightened, fury flashing across his face. You traitorous bastard! Ethan met his glare, a smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. Let's call it justice. Vincent clenched his fists, but he wasn't ready to surrender. In one swift motion, he pulled a gun from his coat, aiming straight at Sebastian. A single gunshot shattered the night. Vincent's body jerked, his eyes widening as he looked down at his own hand. Blood seeping through his sleeve, spreading rapidly. His grip on the weapon slackened, and the gun clattered onto the deck with a hollow, lifeless sound. Sebastian slowly lowered his own gun, his expression unmoved. Vincent staggered, barely able to remain standing. You... This is the price you pay. Sebastian's voice was calm, final. The sound of heavy footsteps filled the air as law enforcement agents stormed onto the yacht. It was over. The aftermath. As Vincent was taken away, Ethan stepped beside Sebastian, tossing him a thick folder of documents. The last of the evidence, he said. I've been compiling it for months. Sebastian took the file, flipping through the pages. This was the final piece. Proof of Vincent's illegal dealings, fraudulent contracts, and his attempt to overthrow Blackwood Shipping. Sebastian studied Ethan for a long moment before giving a small nod. Thank you. Ethan smirked. Don't thank me. I just did what was right. And now I can finally walk away from all this. Sebastian nodded. You did good. Ethan turned to Kira. I suppose now you understand why I did what I did, don't you? She looked at him, considering everything that had happened. Finally, she gave a small nod. She had once thought Ethan was her enemy, but in the end, he had become one of their most important allies. Taking a deep breath, Ethan turned away, his silhouette fading into the dark. I hope I never have to see either of you under circumstances like this again. Sebastian and Kira watched as he disappeared into the night. He's a complicated man, Kira murmured. Sebastian let out a quiet chuckle. We all are. She glanced up, and for the first time, she caught warmth in his gaze. After everything they had been through, after all the pain, the uncertainty, the battles fought, Kira finally allowed herself to trust, not because Sebastian was perfect, but because he had chosen to stay. The sea was calm, the wind whispered through her hair, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, she felt at peace. This wasn't just an ending. This was the beginning of something eternal. The first light of dawn broke over the ocean, casting golden hues across the horizon after a night of chaos. On the deck of the Solstice, Sebastian leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the endless expanse of water. It was over. Blackwood Shipping was his again. The trader had been taken into custody, and he no longer had to live in the shadows. Kira stepped beside him, draping a jacket over his shoulders, even though she knew he didn't need it. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Sebastian turned to her, a faint smile crossing his lips. "For the first time in a long while, I feel at peace." She nodded, but there was something unsettled in her expression. "So, that means we don't have to run anymore." A long silence stretched between them before Sebastian finally spoke. "No, we don't. But it also means you're free to leave whenever you want." Her fingers tightened around the railing. That was what she had once wanted. Freedom, no ties, no obligations. But why did those words feel like a knife to her heart now? "And what about you?" Her voice came out quieter than she expected. Sebastian took a deep breath. "I told you, Kira. I don't just want to be the father of your child. I want to be the man beside you." She met his gaze, and for the first time, she felt no fear, no hesitation. She nodded. A rare chuckle escaped Sebastian, a quiet but deeply genuine laugh. "All right, Kira." She smiled, then leaned in and pressed her lips to his, a kiss beneath the rising sun, surrounded by the endless sea, where there were no more secrets, no more shadows, no more running. And for the first time, Kira knew she had finally found where she belonged. 3 months later, Sebastian Blackwood officially returned to his position as CEO of Blackwood Shipping, making his first public appearance since the world had presumed him dead. The press conference hall at the company's headquarters was packed with reporters, camera flashes illuminating the stage as he stepped forward. Dressed in his signature tailored suit, he looked every bit the powerful businessman the world had always known him to be. But there was something different now, a quiet strength, a steadiness that went beyond boardroom negotiations and financial empires. In the glare of the spotlights, it was clear that Sebastian had changed. "First and foremost, I want to thank those who stood by me and believed in Blackwood Shipping during this difficult time." His deep voice resonated through the hall, his sharp gaze sweeping over the sea of reporters. "I am not here just to reclaim my position. I am here to lead this company into a new era, an era of transparency, strength, and a future untainted by corruption." A wave of applause rippled through the crowd. The journalists were ready, poised to fire questions about his disappearance, about the conspiracies that had nearly destroyed him. But Sebastian only offered a knowing, measured smile. "We cannot change the past," he said, "but we can shape the future. And the future of Blackwood Shipping will no longer be dictated by shadows." As he prepared to step away from the podium, his eyes flickered toward the front row, where a woman with long brown hair and unwavering blue eyes watched him. Kira. She no longer hid in the background, no longer lingered in the shadows as a journalist chasing the next big expose. She was here not for the story, but for him. And for the first time in his life, Sebastian knew that nothing mattered more. That evening, Sebastian drove Kira toward a quiet suburban area just outside London. She sat in the passenger seat, watching as the city lights faded behind them, her mind filled with curiosity. "Where are you taking me?" she finally asked. Sebastian simply smiled, offering no answer. A few moments later, the car rolled to a stop in front of an elegant brick house, nestled within a small garden overflowing with blooming roses. Kira stepped out, inhaling the crisp, fresh air of the countryside. She turned to him, her eyes filled with silent questions. "I once told you that when all of this was over, there was something important I needed to do." Sebastian took a step closer, his dark eyes filled with something warmer, deeper than she had ever seen before. Raindrops began to fall, soft, delicate drops that dampened her hair, but she barely noticed. The only thing she could see was the man before her, the man who had run with her, fought with her, and now stood before her with something greater than all of that. Sebastian knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. I have lived a life full of storms, but I never truly felt alive until I met you. He opened the box, revealing a simple yet perfect platinum ring. I told you once before, I don't just want to be the father of your child. I want to be the man standing beside you. So I'll ask you again today, Kira Donovan, will you marry me? Kira stood frozen. Rain cascaded down her face, but she didn't care. For so long she had believed that marriage was a chain, something fragile, something that could be betrayed and abandoned. But here, standing before this man, she realized it wasn't a cage. It was a promise, a real promise, one not dictated by obligation or gain, but by choice. She looked into Sebastian's unwavering gaze and she knew she didn't have to run anymore. A smile broke across her face, tears blending with the rain. Yes, I will. Sebastian rose to his feet, pulling her into his arms, capturing her lips in a kiss beneath the falling rain. No more shadows, no more danger, just the two of them and the future ahead. 1 year later, in a stunning beachside villa, Kira cradled a tiny baby boy in her arms, his jet black hair curled slightly against his soft skin, his deep blue eyes fluttering shut as he dreamed peacefully. Sebastian stepped beside her, pressing a gentle kiss to their child's forehead. He has your eyes, he murmured. Kira chuckled softly. But he has your smile. They stood on the balcony, gazing out at the endless ocean stretching before them. The breeze carried the scent of the sea, a calm, steady rhythm that mirrored the new life they had built together. Kira turned to the man beside her, the man who had once been a mystery, a ghost among the living. But now he was her husband, the father of their child, the one person she knew she could trust forever. Sebastian gently squeezed her hand. Are you happy? She met his gaze, her smile full of love, peace, and certainty. More than ever, he leaned in, capturing her lips in a soft, lingering kiss. And in that moment, Kira knew every hardship, every danger they had faced had been worth it. They were no longer running. There were no more secrets between them, only love and a lifetime to share it. Their story was not just a journey from mystery and danger to love. It was a journey of growth, forgiveness, and believing in a future worth fighting for. Because sometimes the greatest battle is not against an enemy, but against the fears within our own hearts. And when we dare to face them, we can find love, peace, and a place to call home. Thank you for following our story. Did this story touch your heart? Leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Victoria Langford's return. A storm on the horizon. As if things weren't already chaotic, Victoria Langford hadn't returned to New York out of some nostalgic longing for her ex. She was back with a clear purpose, to reclaim the place she believed rightfully belonged to her, by Nathaniel Whitmore's side. Charlie had no idea who Victoria even was, until the woman's name and face appeared, bold and glamorous, on the cover of a top financial magazine. The headline read, Victoria Langford, the Iron Rose of Investment Returns. Could an old romance rekindle? At first, Charlie didn't pay much attention. A profile piece on some wealthy businesswoman had nothing to do with her, right? But then, as she skimmed through the article, a few particularly pointed lines made her pause. Nathaniel and I share a very special history. Everyone knows that. We were the perfect couple once, but sometimes fate pushes people in different directions. I've always believed that what's meant to be will find its way back. And that assistant of his? Oh, I have no opinion on temporary amusements. Charlie nearly choked on her coffee. She squinted at the screen, making sure she hadn't misread it. Temporary amusement. Fine. If she was just a pastime, then at the very least, she hoped she was a damn expensive one. Closing the laptop with a snap, Charlie leaned back in her chair, exhaling long and slow, as if she had just inhaled a ton of media garbage. Victoria's arrival. A battle of words. 2 days after Victoria's interview had gone viral, Charlie started noticing the change in atmosphere around the office. People whispered when she walked past. Conversations cut off abruptly when she stepped into the elevator. And the looks, some filled with curiosity, others with thinly veiled judgment, were suddenly everywhere. But what annoyed her the most wasn't the gossip. It was the moment Victoria Langford herself strolled into the lobby of Whitmore Holdings, looking completely unbothered, as if she had never left. Tall, golden-haired, dressed in a perfectly tailored designer outfit, Victoria Langford was exactly the kind of woman Nate's world expected him to be with. Charlie disliked her immediately, not because of her perfect appearance, but because of her smile, arrogant, self-assured, as if she had already won whatever game she thought they were playing. And then, just as she was about to walk past Charlie, she stopped. Her gaze raked over Charlie from head to toe in obvious scrutiny. "Oh, you're Nate's assistant." Charlie raised an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "Oh, you're a guest? Sorry, I didn't know the reception area offered free coffee." Victoria let out a soft laugh, but there was no humor in her eyes. "You've got a sharp tongue. I suppose that's why Nate keeps you around." Before Charlie could fire back, Victoria turned on her heel and stepped into the private elevator, heading straight up to Nate's office like she owned the place. Charlie clenched her fists. She reminded herself that this was just a job, that Victoria was just another obstacle she'd have to deal with professionally. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the nagging irritation at the way Victoria walked in, as if she could reclaim everything anytime she pleased. An hour later, Charlie was reviewing Nate's schedule when a familiar figure appeared at her desk. Victoria, poised, elegant, and clearly in the mood to be an absolute menace. "Got a minute?" she asked, her tone dripping with condescension. Charlie looked up with the carefully polite smile she reserved for the most irritating clients. "Oh, I'm swamped, but I always have time for people who show up just to cause trouble." Victoria smirked and slid into the chair across from her, crossing her legs gracefully. "You think you know Nate, don't you?" Charlie leaned back slightly. "Not really. Some days I think he's a financial genius. Other days I think he's an emotionless robot." Victoria chuckled lightly, but her eyes turned sharp. "Do you know why Nate and I broke up?" Charlie tilted her head, pretending to consider it. "Because you couldn't handle his control freak tendencies?" Victoria's smile didn't falter, but her voice dropped slightly, her words cutting. "We broke up because I couldn't accept that he will never put emotions above his ambitions. For Nate, nothing comes before his goals." Charlie said nothing. Victoria took her silence as an invitation to continue. "I won't deny that you have a certain appeal." She waved a hand dismissively. "The ordinary girl charm, something fresh to distract him. But trust me, when that wears off, when Nate is faced with what truly matters, you'll see you were just a passing amusement." Charlie felt something tighten in her chest. Not because she believed Victoria, but because the words touched on something she had secretly feared all along. Yes, Nate cared about her. But was that enough to override everything he had been raised to believe? Would she ever truly matter in his world? Or was she just a fleeting distraction from the battlefield of high-stakes business? Victoria watched her closely, as if reading every doubt flickering across her face. Then with a quiet, knowing smile, she leaned in slightly. "You're a smart woman, Charlie. So be smart about this. Don't let yourself get hurt." With that, she stood, smoothed out the fabric of her designer dress, and walked away, leaving Charlie sitting there, her thoughts in complete turmoil. A night of doubts. That night, as Charlie returned to her small apartment, she couldn't stop thinking about Victoria's words. She hated that she was letting them get to her. But the truth was, Victoria wasn't wrong. Nate had never once said he wanted anything more than a professional relationship with her. Yes, he cared about her, but caring didn't mean forever. And what about her? She had spent so much time by Nate's side that even she wasn't sure anymore. Was this just a job, or had it become something else entirely? Charlie had never been the type to get involved in something without a future. She wasn't the kind of woman to throw everything away just for a man, no matter who he was, even if that man was Nathaniel Whitmore. But what if Victoria was right? What if this was just a temporary infatuation? Charlie had never been afraid of a challenge, but this wasn't just a challenge. This was her heart, and she wasn't sure if she was willing to bet on it. Charlie slowly walked through the bustling streets of New York, letting the crowd rush past her. The neon lights blazed, car horns blared, but everything felt distant and dull. Her hands were still gripping the stack of documents she was supposed to place on Nate's desk. But now none of it mattered anymore. She had planned to leave early to celebrate her brother's birthday, to have a peaceful evening with the only family she had left. But how could she smile and pretend everything was fine after hearing those words? Just a competent assistant. Nothing more, nothing less. Nate's words kept replaying in her mind like a broken record. She had once believed there was something special between them. She had once thought the way he looked at her, the times he protected her from the media, the late-night conversations where he let his guard down, meant something. But in the end, she was just an employee, a small piece in the massive machinery of his world. And Nate? He hadn't even hesitated when he said it. Charlie let out a hollow laugh, feeling like a fool. Victoria was right. She had been right about everything. Charlie stopped in the middle of the crowded street, looking up at the skyline filled with towering skyscrapers. This city never slept, but it also never truly belonged to people like her. Could she stay and pretend she hadn't heard anything? Number. She wasn't that kind of person. Charlie clenched her fist, taking a deep breath. Tomorrow morning, she would leave her resignation letter on his desk. And after that, she would disappear from Nathaniel Whitmore's world. No explanations, no pleading, no looking back. That night, Nate returned to his office, planning to finish a few remaining documents before heading home. But the moment he switched on the lights, his eyes immediately landed on a neatly placed envelope on his desk. He frowned. Something didn't feel right. With a growing sense of unease, he picked it up and opened it. Inside was a resignation letter, neat, precise, but carrying a coldness that hadn't been there before. Resignation letter. A strange chill ran through him. He quickly flipped to the next page. Thank you for the time I spent here. I've learned a lot, but I am not your game. I will no longer be your assistant. No further explanation. No goodbye. Nate clenched the paper in his hands, his breath hitching for a fraction of a second. He didn't understand what had happened. He did, but it was already too late. Charlie was gone. Are you still following the story? What do you think about Charlie's decision? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Nate had never been the kind of man to accept defeat easily. He had lost major deals before, faced crises that could shake an entire corporation, but never, not once, had he felt this out of control. Charlie had been gone for a month. At first, he thought she was just angry. Maybe she needed time to cool down. But as the days passed, each unanswered email, each ignored phone call, he started to panic for real. He didn't understand. Charlie had always been there, always walking into his office with a cup of coffee and that mischievous smile, always teasing his obsessive need for perfection, always being the only person who wasn't afraid of him, who didn't try to flatter him. And now she was gone, as if she had never existed. For the first time in his life, Nathaniel Whitmore didn't know what to do. He tried everything to reach her, but nothing worked. She had quit, cut ties completely with the company, erased herself from his world as if she had never been a part of it. The first few days, he was frustrated. By the second week, he felt the absence. By the third, he realized he had made a terrible mistake. And by the start of the second month, he couldn't take it anymore. Charlie wasn't just a good assistant. She was the only person who had ever made him feel like there was something worth fighting for. He knew he couldn't let her go. So he did something that no billionaire with unlimited power would ever do. He drove to her tiny Brooklyn apartment and rang the doorbell himself. When Charlie opened the door, she was completely stunned. Standing in front of her was Nathaniel Whitmore, a man who only existed in expensive suits and luxury cars. But right now, he looked unmistakably lost. His shirt was unbuttoned at the top, his hair was slightly messy, and he looked like he hadn't slept properly in days. Charlie crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe, trying to suppress a smirk. "Let me guess," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You got lost?" Nate raised an eyebrow. "Do you always have to tease me to have a conversation?" "Yes," Charlie shrugged. "Otherwise, where's the fun?" But despite her casual tone, she couldn't ignore the way her heart was racing at the sight of him. He was here. After a month of silence, he was really here. Nate took a deep breath. He wasn't good at expressing emotions. His whole life had been about work, numbers, power, and wealth. But now, standing in front of this woman, he knew he had to be honest. I always thought I didn't need anyone, he began, his voice lower than usual. I believed that if I kept everything at a safe distance, I would never get hurt. Charlie didn't say anything. Nate continued. But you changed that. You're not just my assistant, Charlie. He looked straight into her eyes, and for the first time, there was no coldness in his gaze, only an unexpected sincerity. You're the only person who has ever made me feel like there's something worth fighting for. Charlie was silent for a few seconds. She didn't know how to react. She had been waiting for an explanation, but she never expected Nate to say these words, that he actually cared, that he had thought about this. She bit her lip, trying to keep her expression neutral. So, what exactly are you saying? She asked, her tone still teasing, but not as sharp as before. Nate sighed. I'm saying that if you let me, I want to prove to you that you matter to me more than anything else. Oh, this is huge. Charlie widened her eyes dramatically. Nathaniel Whitmore, putting someone above his work? Nate couldn't help but chuckle. Maybe you're the only person in the world who could make me do that. Charlie blinked, staring at him for a long moment. He didn't say, I love you. But he didn't have to. Because for Nathaniel Whitmore, just stepping out of his perfect world, standing at her doorstep, admitting that he was wrong, that he missed her, that was enough. She crossed her arms, tilting her chin. So how exactly do you plan to prove it? Nate flashed a confident smile. By spending all my free time doing whatever you want, he said, then tilted his head, a mischievous glint in his eyes. For example, grabbing pizza in Brooklyn? Charlie laughed. Can you ever be serious? No, Nate shrugged, because if I were too serious, you wouldn't agree. She watched him for a moment, then shook her head. You're impossible. Nate smiled, not denying it. But, Charlie dragged out the word, her eyes twinkling with amusement. I do like pizza, and maybe you need to experience this thing called normal life at least once. So, is that a yes? Not sure yet, she shrugged. I'll consider it if you don't wear a suit to eat pizza. Nate chuckled. Deal. Charlie shook her head, but the smile on her lips was undeniable. Maybe only Nathaniel Whitmore could show up at her doorstep after a month of silence, confess that he had messed up, and then use pizza as a way to make amends. And maybe only she could make him break all of his own rules. She wasn't ready to forgive him just yet, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to turn down the chance to see if he was truly serious. 1 year later, the Imperial Grand Hotel remained as luxurious as ever, still a gathering place for the elite and the most powerful figures in New York. But today, for Charlie, it was no longer the place where she had to run around solving absurd VIP requests. Tonight, she stood on the balcony of the presidential suite, the very room where it all began, silently gazing down at the city lights that stretched endlessly below. Behind her, Nathaniel Whitmore, the once arrogant billionaire, was fumbling with a bottle of wine, trying to open it casually, but failing rather spectacularly. Damn it, he muttered as the cork snapped in half. Charlie chuckled, turning around, arms crossed, watching him with amusement. Let me guess. You bought the hotel, but you still can't open a bottle of wine? Nate raised an eyebrow. I didn't buy the hotel. Charlie blinked. What? I bought this room, Nate said casually. It means something to us, and I figured it'd be better if we owned it. So now, it's yours. Charlie's jaw dropped. Nate, you can't just buy the entire world every time you want to surprise me. Nate set the bottle down and stepped closer, his blue-gray eyes warm. I'm not buying the world, he said softly. I just wanted to buy back our first moment, the place where you fell asleep on that sofa, the place where I realized I was completely drawn to you. And I want us to have a new beginning here. Charlie felt her heart skip a beat. Nate! But before she could say anything else, he knelt down, pulling out a small, deep blue box. I know you hate cliché proposals, he grinned, his voice carrying a hint of nervousness. But you also know I don't do things the normal way. Charlie covered her mouth, her eyes wide. Charlotte Brooks, You're not just my business partner. You're the only person bold enough to look me in the face and tell me I'm an arrogant, stubborn, and occasionally controlling man." Charlie giggled through her tears. "Anything else?" "Oh, plenty," Nate nodded. "You're also the only person who makes me want to be a better version of myself." He opened the box, revealing a simple yet elegant ring, just dazzling enough, but not so over the top that Charlie would feel like she was being drenched in gold. "So," Nate continued, his gaze filled with nothing but devotion, "would you like to spend the rest of your life calling me out on my nonsense, teasing me, and perhaps, occasionally, helping me pick out a tie?" Charlie looked at him for a long moment, then burst into laughter. "Well, will you accept that there will be days when I drive you absolutely insane?" "Always ready. And you do know that even though I love you, if you do something stupid, I will still throw a pillow at your face?" "I'll stock up on pillows." Charlie took a deep breath, staring into the eyes of the man before her. The man who, a year ago, had been nothing more than a cold-hearted billionaire who didn't believe in love, yet now knelt before her, waiting for her answer. She smiled, reaching out to lightly touch the ring. "Well then," she dragged out the words, making Nate hold his breath. "I say yes." The moment those words left her lips, Nate pulled her into a deep kiss, right in the room where it had all begun. Outside the window, New York still shimmered with dazzling lights, but for them, this moment was everything. 3 months after the unexpected proposal in the presidential suite, the wedding of Nathaniel Whitmore and Charlotte Brooks became the most talked-about event of the year. New York had seen its fair share of extravagant weddings, but no one could have predicted a ceremony that blended aristocratic elegance with the wild, rebellious humor of the bride. Charlie adamantly refused the traditional wedding Nate wanted to hold at a 7-star resort in the Maldives or aboard a $1 million yacht. "There's no way I'm letting our wedding feel like a business conference," she declared when Nate handed her a list of renowned CEOs he wanted to invite. In the end, they compromised. An outdoor ceremony at a historic English castle, arranged by Nate, and a massive after-party featuring pizza and craft beer in Brooklyn. Charlie's idea. "The wedding is for you, the party is for me," she said proudly, patting Nate on the shoulder. "And what about the honeymoon?" Nate asked, his smirk full of mischief. Charlie raised an eyebrow. "Do you want to negotiate?" Nate chuckled. "Number, the honeymoon is 100% mine." On the wedding day, the media went into a frenzy when the infamous billionaire, always seen in the sharpest suits, stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, paired with a neon pink tie. As Charlie, stunning in her wedding dress yet radiating her signature rebellious energy, took his hand, she whispered, "You actually let me pick your tie?" "It's a tribute to your first day as my assistant," Nate smirked. The ceremony was just like them, elegant yet filled with moments of humor. Charlie nearly tripped on her dress while walking down the aisle, only to have Nate catch her just in time. "Got you," he murmured. "Yeah, well, don't think you'll always get to do that," she shot back. "I'll try anyway." When the officiant asked if she took Nathaniel Whitmore as her husband, Charlie looked straight into his eyes and answered seriously, "Only if he agrees not to take up more than 70% of the bed." The entire crowd burst into laughter, and Nate simply silenced her with a deep kiss, sealing his vow without words. 1 year after the wedding, while Charlie was still immersed in her work as a financial consultant for Whitmore Holdings, she started noticing something strange, feeling unusually tired and suddenly craving pizza at 3 a.m. Nate, ever the observant one, picked up on it immediately. "Charlie, are you sick?" he asked, eyes filled with concern as she held her stomach. Charlie glanced at him. "Do you think I'm sick? Or do you think I might be pregnant?" The world seemed to stop. Nate blinked, completely frozen for 3 seconds. "You're pregnant?" Charlie held her breath, waiting for his reaction. And then, Nate jumped up, scooped her into his arms, and spun her around. "Charlie, oh my God, I'm going to be a dad?" "Put me down. I swear, if you make this baby dizzy before it's even born, I will kill you." Nate immediately placed her back on the ground, but the grin on his face never faded. That night, as they lay in bed, Nate placed his hand gently over Charlie's stomach, whispering, "I can't believe it. We're going to have a family. Charlie smiled, touching his cheek. Well, let's hope the baby inherits my intelligence and your looks. Nate raised an eyebrow. And what about personality? Charlie thought for a moment, then smirked. Honestly, probably best if they inherit neither of us. We're both way too stubborn. I don't want to raise a tiny menace. Nate laughed, pulling her closer. That's fine. No matter what, this will be the luckiest kid in the world, because they'll have you as their mom. Charlie looked up at her husband's deep, sincere eyes and realized happiness wasn't about perfect moments. It was about having someone to go through every challenge, every fear, and wait together for the best things to come. 1 year later, as Charlie rocked their baby to sleep in the nursery, Nate walked in, looking like a man who had conquered Wall Street, yet now juggling diapers, baby wipes, and formula in his arms. I thought being a CEO was hard, but being a dad? Now that's a real challenge. Charlie laughed, taking the diapers from him. Welcome to the world of sleepless nights and diaper changes, my love. Nate glanced down at the tiny figure in the crib, a little girl with soft brown hair and eyes identical to her mother's. Do you think she'll grow up to be a business mogul? He mused, gently brushing his fingers over her tiny hand. Charlie tilted her head, pretending to think. Not sure, but I do think she's going to tease you relentlessly, just like her mother. Nate chuckled, bending down to place a kiss on his daughter's forehead before whispering, as long as she's happy, I'll support whatever she chooses. Charlie watched the scene, feeling her heart melt. She leaned into Nate, squeezing his hand tightly. They had come such a long way, from an unexpected meeting, through misunderstandings and heartbreak, from decisions that once seemed irreversible. But in the end, everything had led them to this moment. A small home filled with love, a life that wasn't perfect, but was undeniably meaningful, and a little girl, a symbol of the love they had built together. And so Charlie and Nate's journey concluded with a wedding to remember, an unshakable love, and a beautiful little family. In the end, money and status aren't what matter most. What truly matters is finding someone who makes you laugh every day, someone willing to go through every storm with you, and someone you can build a future worth living for. So, if it were you, would you be willing to risk everything for the one true love of your life? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with your friends and family.